go. Well, welcome to another Tyrrell's Classic Workshop, and we have got something very different, which I can guarantee nobody in the world has ever talked about, and that is an Aston Martin Lagonda Vantage, factory original. And the car's come in for a tune-up and a couple of other jobs. I'm very privileged to have the gentleman who ordered the car new and bought it new, specially from Aston Martin, Mr. H. Hello, Mr. H, and welcome.
Thank you.
This is the most impressive car history I have ever seen. You have got every shred of paperwork with this car, everything.
Yes.
And you ordered the car as a Aston Martin Lagonda Vantage from new. Yes. And this is one of one. It's the only one ever made.
Correct.
And
by Aston Martin.
By Aston Martin. Of course, other people, there are independent companies that have modified them, but this is the only original factory Aston Martin Lagonda Vantage. And I've worked on, dare I say it, a lot of Aston Martins. We've been privileged enough to rebuild the engine on the Prince of Wales V8 Vantage, the original car, in the workshop here some years ago. So I consider myself reasonably up to speed with Aston Martins, but I'd never heard of this car. Please tell me a little bit about the background.
Thank you. Well, this what I wanted to order, something very unusual. And I love the car since I've seen it back in the 70s, actually, in the motor show when I was student at that time. And I thought that is the car which I will have.
But what made you go for the Vantage engine?
Well, it's because the car is big and heavy. When you buy an Aston Martin, then it got to be an Aston Martin. And I didn't want something slow, like all the other cars. And this is why I say I wanted something very powerful. In fact, they were thinking to put 2 superchargers on it, which they put on the Bulldog Aston Martin. But they asked me if I can dispose with the pop-up headlamps. So they can put the supercharger there because they need the ventilation for it. Otherwise, it will take the paint off the bonnet from the heat, which it generates.
Yes.
So they were going to make the inlet for the supercharger there. But I wanted the car as it is a Lagonda, not modified like that. And this is why they suggested the Vantage engine in it. Apart from that, they put as well as the gearbox is different in it because the torque converter they had to order from California where they use it for the track race.
Right. Different internals in the torque.
That's it. And they long before the Taptronic and pedal shift comes, they had this device which it has got it on the car, but you got to do it manually, adjust it, which it's to adjust it whether you want it for performance or whether you want it for economy. And you walk the torque curve and you see when you want it to change. I had all the sketches from Aston Martin themselves. And they got this device which it changes so quick. I mean, very unusual for an automatic car to change that quick.
Right.
And if you drive it, then you will notice that how quick it will change.
Right.
And the first gear will take you to 58 miles per hour. The second one will take you to 115. And the third one will take you up to over 160 or 165.
Yes.
Which the car it does.
But this is high tech for the 1980s. This is cutting edge technology. Actually.
Well, it is. It is because this car been ordered in 1984.
So this is from the 1st of August 1985, and the price is £66,836. But you said it actually it ended. That's for the basic car.
Absolute basic.
And so how much did it end up actually costing?
It's just under 100.
Just under £100,000.
Yes, it's because of all the accessories which I had on the car, because the paintwork is different. That is not standard paint. The leather inside it.
Now this is Connolly VM 3997.
Yeah, well, which is again, you can get the leather, but it's the quality of it.
Oh, yes.
So you got to leave it in the tumbler longer to get the leather softer.
Right.
And the shade of it is different from this because it's the shade in it. It's got some of the magnolia. It looked like a greenish color. This one got a pinky color. So like a peach color. Wow. So it's a warmer
Must
than
be a nightmare to replicate that. Yeah, wow. Okay. I mean, £100,000 in 1984 was a lot of money. I don't know how much a Bentley Turbo R was around.
Well,
that.
actually,
in fact, the Turbo R wasn't announced till '85, so it'd be a Mulsanne Turbo.
No, it was actually, because I tried the Bentley Turbo. I didn't try the Rolls Royce. I said go for the Bentley because more sporty.
That would be the Mulsanne Turbo at that time.
And the Turbo, correct.
Yeah.
And when I drove it, it was so wobbly and I can't drive it.
Yeah.
And I told them if they can stiffen it and lower it and make the steering any, they say sorry, they cannot make.
Right. Well, they were developing the Turbo R when Aston Martin built your car.
Well, they brought me one of their demonstrator to show me they done this, but I say it's too late now. But the price of the Bentley compared to this, I could have got that Bentley as well as Jaguar XJ6 at the time for the price of this.
And of course, one of the big things on these cars is the electronics, isn't it? The dashboard. I mean, this
it is, and this is why, because they had a problem with the Sinclair instrument, which had the very first
big problem,
and then they decided to go for this new American, which it was Javelin Corporation. And that is developed for the F-15 fighter jet.
Developed for the F-15 fighter jet. Wow. Because, I mean, Aston Martin, they spent a fortune developing first generation, second generation electronic instrument systems, and they had terrible problems with them, actually, initially.
They did, because Aston Martin always they go for something special.
Yes.
Which is nobody done before.
Yeah.
And when you do this one and then you build small quantities, then you always find a problem with them.
Of course. Now, there was also a diagram you showed me of some other, the diagram of the electronics.
Oh, you want to see that, do you? Right, that one is in here actually.
I'm keeping you busy now.
I know you are, Iain, but it doesn't matter.
It's such an interesting story, this. I mean,
this is the wiring broadsheet for the right-hand drive car.
And this is based on the F-15 fighter.
Not this one.
Not this one.
No, this is the Sinclair instrument.
Oh, this is the Sinclair.
Correct.
Right. So this is the first generation, actually.
This is the first generation.
Yeah.
Yes. This is why they left it in here, because it's a lot of the wiring, although it's the same, but they changed the displaying.
Right, I see. Okay, incredible.
On it.
And it's also beautifully. I mean, the handbook pack, everything is in pristine order. Really, this is like new, literally. Isn't that beautiful? You really were on a journey with Aston Martin. This was almost like developing a one-off car. I dread to think how much Aston Martin actually lost.
A lot.
Developing that car for you.
They lost a lot because they didn't built many of the Lagondas. This one It's, I think, number 16. They built only 16 for the year which I ordered mine.
It was like joining a very exclusive club, wasn't it?
Well, it is. It is.
Yes.
Yeah. So this is the beauty of it. And
Isn't that
you have
wonderful?
something like that. So you cannot part with something like that, which you...
This could have been a James Bond car, couldn't it, actually?
Well,
very special...
it's too heavy for a James Bond.
A very
car.
special Aston Martin. Well, there's no pressure, but I'd better start tuning this beast and seeing what we can do with it. Thank you very much, Mr. H. We'll have a look at the car now.
Thank you.
Well, here it is, the beast. This car is layer upon layer upon layer of special. It could easily have been a Bond car. One of the first things that strikes me is these enormous wheels, which obviously weren't available in the 1980s. The technology was not there. But why has the car got them fitted? Well, as Mr. H explained to me, the suspension on this car is very stiff and very rigid. The ride's still smooth, but it's very much towards the handling side of things. And the centre of gravity on this car is very low. Because it's alloy-bodied and such a low car, a lot of the weight is very low down. But one of the problems he was encountering was that when you went round a corner with the original 15-inch wheels, the sidewalls in the tyres tended to move, and it gave quite sloppy handling. So he got in touch with BBS Wheels in the 1990s, and they developed these special wheels for this car with the correct rolling radius of tyre. So the 15-inch wheels obviously would be that sort of depth of sidewall. Still the correct overall rolling radius, but allowing better brake cooling and much better road holding. Now, okay, it's a moot point as to whether they improve the appearance of the car or not. I'll leave that up to you. Practically, I'm sure they work very well. I'm not a great lover of the original wheels either, but I don't know. We'll see. But the car itself is stunning. It's the original Hereford brown paint, special order paint from 1985, 1986. The interior is all original. It's Connolly Nuella leather. It was special leather that was conceived for the likes of the Rolls-Royce Camargue and the Lagonda. Excruciatingly expensive leather. I'm estimating there's probably 6 or 7 hides in that car. And these days, you're probably talking about £1,000 a hide for Nuella leather from Jonathan Connolly now. But there are all sorts of special features on this car, and I'm going to tune the engine and then take it for a run, and I can explain some of the special features as we go. The electronics inside are all working and functioning, but they are incredibly wacky, really. The switchgear is crazy for a 1980s car, and it all still works. It's all in beautiful condition. Nothing's been restored on this car. The woodwork, everything is still perfect. And the leather, the original lamb's wool rugs are still in the car. It's done just over 30,000 miles since Mr. H bought it and specified it new. They all have this glass moonroof in, which again is very 1980s, and next to no room in the back, strangely enough, for so large a car. The sheikhs in the Middle East absolutely bought these more than anybody else in the world. These days, I guess it would be China, but it wasn't then. But they all like to drive them themselves. It wasn't a car to be driven in, so the back actually isn't that huge. If you sort of think of this car as a 4-door Lotus Esprit of the 1970s, you won't be far off it in terms of its looks and its vision and its low centre of gravity, etc. Obviously far more expensive and far more specialised, but there's so much about this car that was specially specified by Mr. H, including some of the weird lights in the boot lid. We'll just take a look at that now. The hazard lights and side lights are working, and through some 1980s micro switch technology, it transfers to there. Also, this is the driver's lamb's wool rug, but also 007. We have a attaché case here, the original untouched, factory original, complete toolkit from 1986. Spare spark plugs, everything laid out, white gloves, don't want to get your hands dirty, just stunning. absolutely stunning. And of course, no 1980s mega car would be complete without the obligatory boomerang TV aerial on the boot, so that you can watch the latest instalment of Beverly Hills Cop as you're being transported wafting along the road. And here we have one of the Lagonda's trademarks, the digital instruments, which cost Aston Martin so much. They sort of took themselves up a cul-de-sac of expense, which there seemed to be no end of. But the result is fantastic. Really, really amazing. Very, very unusual. Well, this is the evergreen Aston Martin V8, which was built, I think, from 1971. They productionised it after some teething problems during development, but it became a really great engine. It's 2 valves per cylinder, but it's a powerhouse of an engine. I presume the reason Aston Martin went for a 4-cam layout is simply because they could, because it's more exotic. But also it does open this engine up to do over 6,000 RPM without any valve train, items being threatened, etc. Push rods without the inertia of that. Just a more elegant engineering and expensive engineering solution. It's an all-alloy V8. The internals has been documented, and we've talked about Vantage, so it's larger valves, larger ports, different cams. But the carburettors on this car, what they actually did was put the standard 42mm carburettors on the engine instead of the Vantage's 48, just to make it more tractable with the automatic gearbox. And actually this combination works extremely well. I've actually modified Aston Martin engines to exactly more or less this specification before. Did one about 10 years ago, and it does make for a very sweet engine. You really only need the extra large carburettors above 5,500 RPM. Up till then, you can hardly tell the difference in gas flow. So I'm going to set this engine up now. I'm using the familiar hosepipe method. One of these days, we can't do it within the confines of this video because this is a customer's car. We've got to get it done. But sometime I'll actually explain the frequencies and the volumes of what I'm listening to in the rubber tube when I tune an engine. Can't do it this time, but will do it in the future because people have been asking about that. So we'll get on and tune the engine and get it running smoothly at idle, and yeah, we'll see how it goes from there. Well, I've done a basic setting up of the carburettors, and now I'm just fine-tuning the volume of air and the mixture. As you can see, it's pretty close. That's about as good as it's going to get. It's quite a difficult engine to tune this. They're not easy to get rock steady because you've got effectively 8 separate carburettors under there. But I'm very happy with that. Very happy. Well, here we are out on the sunny route, and what is so lovely about this car is that cars of this age and type, if they're not absolutely kept on top of, condition-wise, can get very old and very ragged very quickly. But this one is still beautiful. The interior, incredibly, after all this time, still smells of lovely leather. Actually, talking of leather, the owner told me, corrected me, it was actually over 30 hides that were used in this car's interior. 30, so everything, the headlining, every last bit is done in Nuella hide. And I think those hides now from Jonathan Connolly cost about £1,000 each for a Nuella hide, which means this car has got the leather alone. To trim this car would be over £30,000 at today's prices. Staggering. But these really were incredibly special cars. Richard Burton bought one the same year, another of the 15 that were built in 1985, where one of them was Richard Burton buying one for Elizabeth Taylor. Just wonderful. But it's what I love about these cars is they actually shrink around you, and I'm not just talking about the lack of space in the back, but it really does handle beautifully. It's so crisp. Lovely steering, very direct, just feels nicely planted on the road. It feels like a very high quality, well engineered car, and it is. But it's just because of the ambience, the lovely smell still, the fact the woodwork is so immaculate, everything still lines up beautifully. It feels like a 1-year-old Aston Martin Lagonda. Well, it's all warmed up with everywhere to go. The carburetors are synchronized as well as I can get them, and it's pulling beautifully cleanly, actually, I have to say. This car just feels great on the road. The ride is sort of slightly toward the firm side for a 1980s car, but it's a very direct steering as well. I've said this before when I've driven these. It feels like the analogy it's not just it looks like a Lotus Esprit Series 1, it actually feels like one too. It's got that same direct point and shoot sort of feel about it. Sat here, the way the windscreen slopes, this dainty little steering wheel, and you just turn in. I mean, this car turns in fabulously well. There's no body roll to speak of. Because the centre of gravity is lower than the traditional Aston Martin V8s of this period, again, just put it into the corner, no roll. It just drives beautifully. It's really settled, and the suspension feels beautifully set up. And I am under instructions from Mr. H to give it a good, hard accelerate. Now, of course, it's a tough job, but one has to do these things. I'll step up to the plate and I'll give it a test. He wants me to try it from a standing start to make sure that it's pulling. We've got that combination, that unique combination with this car of Vantage engine, quick shift automatic gearbox, and everything else that goes with it. But I don't know where the electronic gearbox selector switch is, and I'm not going to start messing with any of these switches because there's thousands of them, and I never know, I might find myself being ejected out the roof if I press the wrong one. With this car, anything is possible. So we'll get it on the straight and see if it's up to Mr. H's very high standards. And there's no way I can pull the wool over his eyes because he's owned the car from new, and he went through the journey with Aston Martin. So we'll just knock it down to first gear, and we'll do a standing start, and it should pull away cleanly. Full bore acceleration. That's beautiful. Oh yes. Oh, it's so quick for such a big car. That is super clean acceleration. I'm very, very happy with that. I think he will be too. It's very, very tricky to get Weber carburetors just right. The Holly carburetor, something like a 650 CFM with vacuum secondaries, just to get technical for a moment, carburetor on an American V8 is like cream on apple pie. The two were just made for each other, and they work beautifully. And one of the fantastic things about a Holly is, in typical American style, it's a plug-and-play solution. You just screw it onto an Offenhauser alloy manifold or something like that, and it's got two idle mixture screws, and off you go. And if it's jetted right, which you adjust the float levels really easily without stripping the carburetor, it's just a fantastic bit of kit. The Webers are more of a racehorse, if you will. They're more complex, they're more difficult to get right. And on this, to get them balanced and actually working properly, is quite a trick really by comparison, but also they sound great. Weber carburetors sound so wonderful. 1 choke per cylinder. It's just it's a different noise to a Holly. It's a more raw noise, a more angry noise, and we'll just give that a little bit of just give it another open up again. In slow, out fast. Oh, this car is a joy to drive. You'd never think it's as big as it is. It's just like a 4-door Lotus. Not quite, but it's so sharp and so stable. No body roll whatsoever. What an amazing machine this is. I don't know how many houses you could have bought for £100,000 in 1985 or 1986, but I'd rather live in this and have the joy of it. Never mind your 3-bed semi. Just wonderful. That glorious bellow, that V8 bellow, which can only come from 8 hungry carburettor throats. Oh, fabulous. Well, just to show, as if no further confirmation was needed, how special this customer was to Aston Martin, they made this, a booster seat for his 4-year-old son, out of the same beautiful leather that they made the interior. Can you imagine a car manufacturer doing a one-off for a customer like this nowadays? They actually ask you to sign 15 disclaimers if anything happened in an accident. No, Aston Martin just made a cushion, ran it up in the trim shop out of some leather, as you do. This car is very tight in the back, and it's just the thing for getting out of elegantly when you win your next Oscar or Grammy Award at the Odeon in Leicester Square. And as if that wasn't enough, they went to the trouble of making a model of the car, Aston Martin this is, for this customer, and they even painted it in the same exact colour as they painted the car. This again for his 4-year-old son. Now that is preferential treatment. Well, that concludes another Tyrrell's Classic Workshop video. I hope you've enjoyed it. If you have, please like, please share, please subscribe, and we'll be back with something else very soon.